Ladies and gentlemen, here I am with Colonel Conrad Thorpe, OBE, and we have had a fascinating exchange for a year already before I was lucky enough to get him to agree to come on it because he's a very humble man. The three hums: humility, humanity, and a lovely, wicked sense of humor. And this theme I'm calling Dominating the Waves, Risk Resilience, and Africa's Front Line. I'll tell you more about him in a minute. But firstly, welcome from Kenya, Conrad. Great to have you here.
Jonathan, with an introduction like that, how can you fail not to get a response that's positive from me? I'm delighted to be here. I'm sitting here in my garden in Nairobi, Kenya, in the country in which I was born.
Well, it's great to have you back there. And I looked back through, we had this long WhatsApp exchange until you got to the point where you were comfortable. But then it's almost like we've become friends, correspondent friends. It's almost like we could write a book from it's a real eclectic mix of stories and insights. You're a man of breadth and depth. I think Dennis Healy called it hinterland, which is very apt for Africa. There's a lot to you. So I'm just looking at notes we had there, describing yourself unfairly as a 62-year-old cripple. We're going to talk about you losing your ankle, having that removed, just having done a 6-hour swim of the Channel for Blesma, and then a second crossing with a 4-man team of people who had been disabled during their service, like you had been. There was a note there on Kenya Defence Forces operating in Lamu country, where I'd been to Lamu myself. IEDs had killed a number of the guys, and the story of Africa and how much conflict there is, that was there. We talked about Idi Amin. We talked about a guy, your particular point about you're not a person who likes believing in chest beating and telling everybody how wonderful you are. And you really don't like the idea of special behind special forces or in front of special forces, and calling yourself a leftover from the colonies and not thinking, and as I do, that colonies is a bad thing. It's not. Then a note about Gary Hutchinson, the silent service, who actually was one of the last people who served on HMS Conqueror that sank the Belgrano. When I was going to Nepal, Nepal was going through a terrible meltdown caused actually by the Maoists who started burning most of the Rana palaces. And you said, look, if you need to be taken out with your wife, extracted from the country, that's what I do. If there's another riot, I can help you. And I knew I was in good hands. So we went to Nepal. And then we exchanged pictures of mountains in the Congo. You've got an amazing story of life in the Congo, which is a country I've never been to and many won't have been there. Then we had Environment Day in Africa with 12% set aside for national park. All the work you did with the national parks has been a big part of your life, all the big bull elephants. And then notes to your Royal Marine Batch Troop and stuff like that. And climbing one of the toughest mountains in the Congo. That's just a little bit of what we talked about. So, Conrad, let's begin. Why have you done what you've done? Why do you do now what you do? Tell us a little bit about what gives your life purpose.
Uh, you know, Listening to you talking there makes me sit up and think about all the great things that we've been able to do in the background, but also all the great things that we've written about but haven't published and haven't spoken about. I think it's really important, first and foremost, I just want to clear up something on the special thing. I loathe and bemoan those who continually attribute the term special. Yeah, I want to tell you this: you're not special if you say you are. Somebody else will award you that. Somebody else will give you that accolade. Looking at the Congo, what happened here? Look, I grew up in Africa. I spent my first 20 years here as a young man, a young boy. I was fortunate to, as a result of our parents not having much money. Father was a policeman, a colonial policeman initially, and then finally came into the Kenyan police before he was Africanized, and an African was put in his place, as in a black African as opposed to a white one. And we went through all those periods, and the wonderful story of my father, shooting at the leopard and missing it when it was attacking livestock and locally in the mountainous region of central Kenya. And then his constable next to him killing the leopard on top of him. These stories are not fanciful. It's true life. And next month, at the end of this month, I will be traveling into central Kenya again to find the family of Muruki Kamwenji. Muruki Kamwenji was our cook. He was injured in the Mau Mau rebellion, as such, in the Mau Mau fight for freedom. My father was a colonial officer in those forests, chasing individuals like him. He was jailed, and then on completion, when he came out of jail, my father gave him a job, and he became our cook. Unfortunately, he died while I was away in the UK. I lost touch with the family. I want to get in touch again. Why do I want to do that? Because I want to make sure that I understood from his family how he felt about a former colonial police officer giving him a job in our house, in the tender house where the children are kept, in his own home. How did that reconciliation come about? Those things are critical to me, Jonathan.
Yeah.
When we fed 5,000 people a couple of years ago, along with my partner, we went up to the north. There was a severe drought on the north near Ethiopian border, and we fed 5,000 people. That sounds really easy just to say that. The politics of getting in our case, 8 tons of food into the north on a vehicle when a military operation was underway to de-arm and disarm the local populations who were fighting tribes and clans that were fighting each other up there. It happened at exactly that time. It wasn't planned, but the operation came in, bang. Next thing is I had a truck full of food, and we had to go and feed these people. But we did it. We went up there, and there's all these wonderful aid agencies out there. Do you know what? We didn't see any, not one of them. And I'm not here poking fun or in any way trying to say that somebody didn't do it, because they are doing great things. They just weren't there when I was there, when it was at its worst. And I wouldn't have had the confidence to go and do those things had I not grown up here. I wouldn't have had the confidence to go and do those things had I not experienced what I experienced back then in Her Majesty, now His Majesty's forces. There was already a huge amount of latent courage within me, personal courage. The risks we took when playing around with crocodiles in those rivers, when we played chicken with the crocodiles and took our shorts off, and that's recently been published in Old Africa magazine in the last month. That was madness. That's just boys' madness. But boys need a bit of madness. They need somewhere to disperse that energy and madness from them, because we're all built the same way. And you'll find these children in the UK and America and other countries in the West, or even Asia, doing silly things, jumping on front of trains or whatever it is. I think your chances of surviving the crocodile swim, that's a better offer than jumping in front of train tracks.
Yeah.
And again, it's about having confidence in that environment. I was a good swimmer, so I got across it. But please, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you're exactly right about young men doing crazy things. And I remember when I was a young officer, in the days when I used to drink. I don't drink now, but I did then. And diving off the bar in the officers' mess into the arms of my friends who were going to catch me or might not catch me and let me go and hit the floor. And I was going to go airborne, and then with a drunk friend we said, let's go and do airborne. Yeah, we're going to do P Company. And I ended up doing it. And of course, I was there standing at the door about to go out my first jump from the Hercules, and I'm scared of heights. I was thinking, what was I thinking of as I went out of the door going, well, whoa, 2000, whoa. And you know all about that from your days in the Royal Marines and other operations you've done. Let's talk a bit about, there's so many things. I want to talk about East African ethnography. I can't even pronounce it with my dyslexia. And diversity of people and culture in Kenya and Congo and all the rest. Military career, business politics, conservation leadership, Somali piracy, ship recoveries. So where should we begin? Is military career a good place to begin? After you did your crazy stuff in Africa, you then signed up and joined the Royal Marines, and you served 21 years in the Royal Marines, if I remember.
Yeah, thank you for that. I liked the idea of starting with ethnography. Let's go to the military. The military was such a fantastic period of my life. I had no idea when I left here just how brutal Royal Marines training was. I had absolutely no idea. I don't know if I told you. I walked into the first office I walked into. This was just me, complete white African, lost on the streets in a city in England. I walked into the RAF office. And I said to the Royal Air Force, and that's because I had a sister that was a doctor in the Royal Air Force. I had an elder brother who was in the police, a younger brother that joined the British Army, and a father that served in the British Army, and a grandfather that served in the British Army, and so forth. We all went into the forces in some way or other and wore uniforms. But I went into the Royal Air Force, and they, being the Royal Air Force, they said, well, what do you want to do in the Royal Air Force? There's so many different branches. It's, so diverse in terms of its output and professionalism. And they gave me a big wad of booklets to look at, aircraftsmen, mechanics, all sorts of wonderful things that you can do, all the way up to, the top dogs and the pilots and everything else, medical and so forth. And I thought, my goodness, I don't need all these documents. I just need you to tell me to get in the Air Force so I can go and do something, pick up a weapon and charge at somebody. And really sort of base thinking in this regard. And I walked out, and the next door was Royal Navy. And it said Royal Navy, Royal Marines. I thought, let me try that. And I walked in there. Of course, I was already a very incredibly lucky and fit young man, having swam for the country in the Commonwealth Games. And although I couldn't get to the Olympics because they kept getting boycotted, notwithstanding the fact I wouldn't have got anywhere, the fact was I was the best they had, certainly in this region, in the water. And that wasn't bad. And I walked in, and there was a Marine behind the desk. And he says, yes, young man, what can I do for you? I said, I've come in to look at the Royal Marines. He says, do you want to be a Royal Marine like me? I said, yeah, like you. And he says, great. He says, jump up on the bar here. There's a pull-up bar in the Marine office for recruiting. And of course, I was good at pull-ups because we had pull-up bars in our garden. We put them up ourselves to do our training on, and I quickly sort of banged out 15 pull-ups. And he goes,
wow, 15. 15.
He goes, you know what? Get in there. Go and see the doctor now. So that's what happened. So the doctor did his bits, which, doctors do. And I came out of that. And then a week or so too later, I got a letter telling me to get on a train and go down to a place called Limstone.
And when was this?
And the journey began then.
What was the date you went to Limstone?
It was 1984, so it was about 18 months after the Falklands War, which my advice to everybody is try not to join immediately after a war. Because everybody's come back, they're miserable after the war, and elated, and they've bonded, and you're suddenly this scallywag that turns up wanting to be like them, and they have a view which is, in order for you to be like us, you're going to have to pay the price, and that price comes with a lot of pain, and the pain can be, mental and psychological pain, where you're deprived of sleep and all of those things that go with it. But they're building men. They're building men for war. They're building men for combat. They're building men for operations, and they're building men that must have character and be prepared to expose themselves and to suffer and to be able to bear with the fear that comes with it. And there is fear, on operations. So I went through recruit training. We joined with 60 boys. I joined as a Marine initially, not as an officer. I guess I was a little different to the other guys. I was a East African. I was a white African. I was the leftovers of the colony, as I put it. I wasn't born and brought up in the United Kingdom or any of its islands or so forth. And yet I had such fond, memories that were imparted to us by our family of, what the old country was like. But of the 60 that joined, there were 9 guys from the original 60 who passed out. And this is after a pre-selection, just 9. This was after a pre-selection. Don't forget, there's a 3-day pre-selection like the Gurkhas do as well, in order to select you for that. And I think we passed out, obviously, with a few other lads with us, but they had been sort of back-trooped into us. And, you're sent off to join your troop in a commando. And I was lucky. I selected 40 commando. I got 40 commando. It's a fabulous unit based in Taunton. And within a very short, they were in Cyprus at the time. Within a very short time, I was in the jungles in Belize, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't get enough of it. I couldn't get on enough patrols. I was on patrol. Every time there was a patrol, I was in the bush. I was on patrol, whether it was on the Guatemalan border or wherever it might be. I was constantly on patrol and loved it. Could not. I was sucking life and loving it. So immediately after that, then, very quickly, the tour seems to come around very quickly, and I put my hand up. There was a Belfast tour coming up. I want to go Belfast. And of course, my father was appalled. My mother had an Irish upbringing. She went to Ireland at the age of 1, so I had this great challenge. I went to a Catholic school effectively as a Methodist, and I was raised around Catholics and went and took communion like I was a Catholic, etc., even though I wasn't. And then I got to Belfast, and suddenly I was categorized as a non-Catholic, even though I'm not a Catholic. I was a Methodist. And I found this great juxtaposition where religions of peoples of even the same color had this pathological hatred for each other, which I couldn't fathom. Imagine having a mother from one side, a father from the other side, and you're in the middle going, what is it that these people don't get? But of course, it's too easy to put it that way. I know Ireland, I've been there many times now. Lovely friends of north and south of the border. And I went back there a few years ago into Anderson Town and Ballymurphy and all those difficult places where we got stoned and bombed and everything else, and where we had our contacts and people did well. And I came back from there and I learnt a lot about Ireland and its people. You're on a political train. It's taking you through politics by people, politics of history, and it's wonderful. And then straight away from Ireland, we were on next thing I was on a ship sailing to Norway. Before I knew it, I was skiing. I'd never skied in my life before. I was incredibly lucky just because of my fitness. I was able to win the Woodmansey Trophy, which is like the best baby Marine or the best new skier, etc. Beating the Americans, beating the Brits, beating the Dutch, beating everybody, and top of the tree. And I felt great about it. I was just physically fit. I could run all day and all night, and so it gave me enormous pleasure. And Norway is a fabulous country with wonderful people, ridiculously expensive, but just that scenery and one of the most beautiful countries on earth. I think matched possibly by Canada's west coast. Norway's fjords, Norway's mountains. It's a great place to be. And then from then, of course, I came back in and I was fortunate to be asked by my commanding officer if I would like to be commissioned and would I like to try and go through the young officer course. And well, guess what? I did. I said yes. But you know what? I hadn't passed my maths O level. So I had to go back and do a maths O level in 6 weeks, in which I did pretty well. I won't give you my result. I did pretty well. Passed it. And the next thing is I joined a fantastic, eclectic, diverse, and wacky batch who the recruits are all still my mates today. The officers are all still my mates today. And I'm on groups with them, and it's this fantastic brotherhood of men. So then officer training started. But when you're now going through training at 23 and you've been through a few tours and a few other things, you're already psychologically positioned in a position of advantage. And I accessed that advantage because it came with huge confidence. But my primary purpose was I'm not without my flaws, despite giving every single person in the batch a nickname. And not all those nicknames were particularly palatable. But everyone had a nickname, including me, which I won't repeat on here for the reasons of decency. But, we grew and bonded. And, there were a couple of idiots in the batch. Well, the idiots eventually left, and no idiots passed out. Just sound, solid, honorable, decent young officers who were then awarded their commandos, and some went to serve with the British Army, exactly, for example. And I went off to 40 Commando again because I asked for it. And, absolutely loved it. Before I could blink my eyes, I was in Mediterranean, then I was in Brunei, out in the jungle again, catching snakes, watching butterflies, etc. And, and it followed. I then specialized. And I was very lucky to be careful to use the word special. I said I specialized. And I went into something different. And the whole passage and chapters of wonder just continued. And terrified as we might be, went through training, which was incredibly tough, to the extent where, even my Bergen split completely in half because the weights were too big inside it. It's called catastrophic failure, if you understand. Catastrophic failure is a term, excuse that, it's a term which is designed
Sorry,
by
just
engineers to
Conrad,
see.
just the plane went by. Just say again, your Bergen split in half because of catastrophic failure. It was so
My
weighted
Bergen,
down.
it was so heavy, the equipment we were carrying. This is in the northwest coast of Scotland, in the middle of winter. There was catastrophic failure and it split from top to bottom. The entire Bergen, everything fell out because the weight was so big. And being the biggest guy, I was carrying some big kit. The boys said to me, boss, no one else, we can't carry this. You're the only idiot who can carry it. And so I was carrying the heaviest bit of the kit. We all shared it, let me be fair. It was all shared. Just so happened that maybe I carried it once more than everybody else, at the most. Remarkable people. It doesn't matter. It wasn't about size. It was not an issue of size. It was about mental
And
capacity.
how tall are you, Conrad?
Well, officially, when I joined the Marines, it said 6'4", and then along the way, it then said I was nearly 6'5". I think that there are measurements and measurements. Let's just say, perhaps if we stick to centimeters, 195 might work better than trying to describe it in Old English money. But
Yeah.
height's just one thing. It helps you in some places, and it doesn't help you in other places. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
that went. I came back from that, and we were successful. Some months later, and I finished my training, and the next thing I knew, bang! It's just so cool. The order comes through. Moved to Iraq. I was like, damn, I love this life. Here we go. Bang, bang. Let's go. And in the aeroplane we deployed out to the friendly countries to the south. And the next thing is we were playing around in the desert, And when you're playing around in places like that, there's so much more than just the military. There's snakes, there's sharks, there's just wildlife everywhere. And so while you're doing these patrols, I'm at the same time as patrolling whatever you might be doing, or swimming, or operating, etc. I'm also looking for what's out there. What is living here. So your eyes are constantly roving and assessing and analyzing and absorbing. And I never forget the situation when we were in the water, and we were creeping into this beach, and I could hear this noise. I was thinking, guys, what's that? The light was very low, so I couldn't see very well. No one could. And then I saw it, and it was the dorsal fin of a large shark feeding in the shallow water alongside us. And of course, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what was facing us and those hills next to us and the sands, etc. We saw the shark. I promise you, every single one of us jumped out of that water and ran to the beach. I got on the beach and started laughing in a big huddle. We were laughing in this huddle. And we looked back, and suddenly the whole beach was just dorsal fins swimming,
Really?
crossing. It was fantastic. It was just fantastic. But the most important thing was just the memory of being with the guys and laughing at how a wild animal can be more fearful for you than an individual with a weapon.
Yeah.
And that relates directly to the crocodile stories as well. Those things that hunt in the water, that come at you and are disguised and don't have dorsal fins up and come underwater to get you, they're to be respected.
Africa is the big theme throughout your life: conservation and bull elephants and helping, train rangers up in the Congo, things like that. We're going to get back to some of that. But I was particularly taken when I said, have you, living in the wild and in Africa and all these rivers and stuff like this, have you ever caught any diseases? And you said, I've had all of Africa's diseases. Do you want to just tell us a bit about what you've had? Go on, it's a list I've got to.
Again, it sounds boastful, right? I'm boasting about diseases. It's a terrible thing to boast about. I'm not boasting about diseases. In fact, some of your watchers here will think I'm a complete idiot for allowing myself to get exposure to those diseases. But I wasn't aware that I had some of the diseases. This is the worrying thing. First and foremost, I got the standard malaria. I got it here in Kenya, and then I went to Congo, and I got it again in Congo. Trouble was, when I was in Congo, I thought I knew better, and I kept telling everybody that I had trypanosomiasis, which is sleeping sickness, because I'd been exposed to Trypanosomiasis rhodesiensis, which is the species we have up here. It was, the doctor was right. He looked at me, he says, no, Colonel, you haven't got that. You've got malaria. So it was my second bout of malaria in Congo as well. I was sick as a dog.
Yeah.
I found out later, of course, that I had bilharzia as well, which is a really nasty disease. My father had it. It's a blood fluke that operates inside your body, inside your blood. And I only found that out when I went to see, am I allowed to say this?
Yep.
I went to see the anus doctor.
Yeah.
Okay. And he looked up that particular back passage, and he said to me, you've got bilharzia, and I think you've had it for quite a while. Well, that really scared me, because I've been in so many rivers and so many dams and so many different places. It's not surprising I got bilharzia. So I then got treated.
Because bilharzia can kill you, can't it?
It's a highly debilitating disease, and it's one of Africa's biggest killers. It's a horrible. These tropical diseases are nasty, but you know, these are all parasites. They love people. People are easy. And people, of course, find out they've got them. But I forget now, 8 or 9 different worms. I've had cutaneous larvae migrans in my skin in Central America, underneath my skin. People have had that too. And you get it out. It's not too bad. I've had these monstrous worms, which unfortunately, this is not good because there's a theme now. I defecated some huge worms. And I just thought to myself, you need to sort yourself out. Get some treatment. Uh, I had mango worms on my head, in and under my skin, which I was still a young lad, and my father pressed this together, and it came out like a huge pustule, and it was a big maggot in my
Oh
head. That
gosh.
probably explains my capacity, my brain capacity. Anyway, he put the maggot in a large matchbox and said, "I must take this home to your mother." My mother was a theatre nurse. I think my father thought that would impress my mother, that I'd come back with another mango worm, having produced it, etc. So there's a lot of worms, and there are many others I haven't touched on there that I've had. I'm not going to go into great detail, having already described what happened in the nether regions. There's been a lot of worms. But at the same time, I was lucky. I kept snakes for many years, and whilst I was foolishly on a couple of occasions sprayed by our, blackneck spitting cobras, Naja nigricollis, which is a wonderful snake, which adapts speed and venom and the ability to spit, so to shoot as well as strike. Imagine a snake that does that. It has to be respected.
And,
But I
and
was unfortunate.
it knows to aim at the eyes, doesn't it? When they've done tests, it
Well, as you
always
can see right now, your eyes looking at me, if I took my hat off, I can see the reflection in your eyes, and it sees that reflection as I can see right now, and that is the target. It knows instinctively that it's got to put venom into your eyes. And of course, if that venom goes into your eyes, it is an instantaneous blinding of you. So you're incapacitated completely. Remember, that's purely defensive. Doesn't want to eat you. Just wants to get rid of you. Get out of my space, move away. Let me be a spinning cobra. And off he goes, etc. But I was bitten on my right arm by a Bittersworthing Tony, which is a small, locally based viper here. Fortunately, not like a puff adder or a gaboon viper, but bad enough to make my entire arm swell up. And I was on a plane that night to London on a British Airways flight, and I couldn't get a shirt on because my arm had swollen up so much. I was lucky. Look, there were many other interesting individuals that have had a go at me, but I think the snakes was my choice. It was my fault. I wanted my children to experience these reptiles close to the house and get some knowledge from me so that they too would understand what it is about serpents that is amazing. And they have absorbed that, and they have become incredibly interested in wildlife and reptiles and birds and everything that goes with it, because this place is constantly awash with animals.
yeah,
Even here,
yeah.
we've got 3 types of monkeys in this garden.
Let's
Yeah, so
let's we're going to go back to the military, but let's stay with
yeah.
animals because it's become a real passion of yours. Aside from hostage releases and ransom paying and being in some really dodgy parts of the world where no one else likes to go apart from people who have special skills. Um, Africa has become a real interest of you. You've walked across much of Africa. We're going to talk about this later. You have this incredible addiction to risk, whether it's playing with a snake or whatever it might be. But what is it that you've really taken to your heart in your birthplace of Kenya, Africa, that you want people to understand, which links to your leadership and your approach to the environment and the world?
Thank you. It's a really good question, Jonathan. And you know the answer to this. And there is a species of animal on this earth which is the most wonderful, possibly the most wonderful animal created. And I don't want to sound fey here. We have on Africa, we still have, fortunately, due to intense conservation in the last 40 years, we've rebuilt our African elephant herds. From where they dropped down to in single digit thousands, back up in this country, for example, in the order of 35, and we're heading back up to 40,000 elephants again. Now, we used to have 40,000 elephants in one park here, which was the Savos, which is effectively 2 parks, but we call it Savo. So today we only have 20,000 elephants down there, but that is all that park can carry. These are wonderful animals. But because they're 6 tons in weight, because they measure the world record at 13 feet at the shoulder, you think about 13 feet at the shoulder, not the head, the shoulder. These animals are literal giants, but they're also incredibly intelligent, fantastically intelligent,
So
intuitive
just quickly,
animals.
when one day my wife and I come to Kenya, because I'd love to come and see you in your country, and we want to go on seeing game, where would you recommend Lee and I go?
Well, of course, I would recommend naturally that you go to Savo, either west or east, but of course, Savo East is a better opportunity, I think, to view these animals in larger numbers. And because the type of vegetation in the area, not less so in the north, I'm talking about, by the way, I'm talking about parks here that are the size of countries. Okay. So that park and its conservation area is the size of Switzerland or Holland. It's big. And it's a park within a country. But of course, I just want to come back to the point here. So these animals need huge space in which to survive. And Savo is one of those places where they do have that space, but they also have it to a lesser extent where they're equally well protected in Amboseli. So if I was you, I would do those two first. If you love elephants, but if you love lions as well, then you must go to Amboseli first and then Savo. And the other good thing about them is they're not swamped with people. All right, so you have space, particularly Savo, you have enormous space in which to view these animals. But come back to the central point I wanted to make here. When these elephants, and particularly the bulls, which are twice the size of the cows, the cow can be 3 tons, the bull will be 6 tons. Okay, the bull's 13 feet at the shoulder, the cow will be lucky to make it to 8 or 9 feet, max at the shoulder, possibly 8, if she's lucky. When these bulls, and you see them with the cows, you truly realize how magnificent these animals are and how big they are. But when they grow this incredible ivory, which goes down from inside their back of their mouths and comes out as an extended tooth, goes all the way down to the ground and measures 8, 9, or 10 feet in length, a tooth. And it grows all their life. Okay, and it continues to grow even as they're dying and their sixth set of molars is wearing out. Now, if those animals can get to 50, to 55, and in some cases we're getting them to 60 and beyond 60 nowadays, and they're dying with their ivory still in their mouths and it hasn't been poached, killed, and the ivory taken, now you know you've got an incredible animal. The animal was a survivor. It survived droughts, it survived thirst, it survived floods, it survived falling in holes, it survived depredation as a youngster with our lions, which kill elephants here, by the way, and eat elephants. People often don't think of that, particularly when they're smaller.
What kills
These lions will kill
the lions will
lions.
kill the elephants? Yeah.
Yeah, they won't kill these adults unless, of course, they're in a state of poor repair. But they will kill the calves and they will kill the youngsters when they get the opportunity. And if the adults are weak, they're going to kill them and eat them. So, just really touching on that, I want to just say one thing: those bulls that get to that size are a moving, living piece of history. An incredible animal with such presence, you cannot fail to feel it. My partner said to me, Pierre, my Danish partner, said to me that she thinks I go there because I need to use it as some form of mental solace to escape due to my history of, let me say, chasing risk and enjoying risk. Look, you don't need drugs on Earth. Why do you need drugs? People have already found the drugs they need, whether it's jumping out of airplanes, whether it's swimming across the oceans, whatever it is. These things are all a form of narcotic. And as long as that narcotic is not damaging you and you take it in balance whilst appreciating and realizing what those risks are, I say pursue it. You want to dive with the sharks, dive with them. You want to walk with these elephants or cats with people that are professional or take you there and you feel exposed, do it. You want to feed
Yeah.
people in barren parts of the world where there's no food, go and do it. Do it,
I
you know?
just think my experience of you is that, I think I've packed a couple of lives into my 64 years. You're a couple of years younger than me, but you've packed like 4 lives into yours. And thinking about your military career and all these amazing things you did in Iraq and Afghanistan and places like that. And now you're the chair of a business. Do you want to talk about what your business does, or would you rather not?
No, I think it's absolutely fine, absolutely right to talk about the business, but business is business. But fortunately, I got into a business that had risk. Oh, I love risk. You know, You
I
might
get
as well
that.
do a job that you
Yeah, I
really
get that idea.
like. And of course, one of the first things we did, and our business does all sorts of good things nowadays, and looking after people and bringing them out into countries and looking after corporations and making sure they're safe and secure and negotiating the political minefields, particularly, which exist down here in Africa and other countries as well, particularly down here in Africa. But, we got a phone call one day. My phone up, took it. It says, there's a guy calling me from London. He says, Conrad, can you deliver a ransom to a ship? I said to him, how many people are on board? He says, just tell me if you can do the ransom first and I'll let you have more information. So I said, give me 30 minutes. I called somebody in 30 minutes, somebody I knew, somebody I'd worked with before, and I knew he had vessels. And I said to him, I need your help. I need a vessel right now. I just need you to commit to me, to tell me you'll let me take one of your vessels away for 2 or 3 weeks and I'll come back with it. And he went, okay. And I said, we'll do the deal. You and me, we share this. It's split evenly. You bear risk, I bear risk. He said, absolutely. So we did. So that's how I got the vessel. And we went up north and we released our first people up there. Highly moving, very exposed. And of course, it took off. I said to the boys after we did drop that first ransom, I said, this is going to explode. And it did. And then within 2 weeks, I was in the vessel back up there. And so it rolled. And that time, people said to me, but these guys are pirates, they're evil, etc. And I said, yeah, you'd be evil if you didn't have anything to eat. You'd be evil, there's no food on your land. You'd be evil if you didn't have anything else that you could do to get money. Now, whatever you think of these individuals, let me tell you, I would suspect that if I was born there, I'd be doing exactly what they were doing. I'm not making it right because it was wrong. I'm merely telling you, where are the options? What are the alternatives? So, in addition to that, that really sort of gave us the financial base to take off. It also gave us the confidence to operate on this vast continent, which is eclectic and wild and fantastic and beautiful, and at times highly frustrating and drags you down and presses you, which is violent as well. There's violence here that's unbelievable. But where isn't there violence nowadays? I think the madness of government drives me crazy sometimes, and the direction in which it takes, and the fact that it is so beset by corruption. That is something I find highly unpalatable. Highly unpalatable. And the first thing people tell me is, oh, there's corruption everywhere. No, 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 no. This is systemic, endemic corruption from the top to the bottom. And it's corrosive and degrading. Yeah.
And let me just come in and just two different questions. The first one was you were recommended to me very strongly by Bruce Lyman, who I had on the podcast, and very lovely guy from Australia. What's the connection with Bruce? Did Bruce work with you? And then the second one was, I'd love you to go into a bit of, you got involved in the politics in Kenya. I'd love to just share a bit about what you've experienced there. But tell me first about Bruce Lyman.
Look, Bruce Lyman's a good guy, right? I mean, his family is like ours in that they were a sort of handful of sons and daughters, etc. Well, that's not daughters in our case, sons and daughters. In his case, sons. He had brothers. His younger brother, one of his younger brothers, two of his brothers, I believe, served in the British Army. One is a fantastic author. Bruce himself is a highly gifted individual with an incredible background. His other brother, Frank, is also similar to that. Incredible background, served in the military, did other things as well on top of that, and has done incredibly. They've all done incredibly well. And I think that Bruce came through here one day and sat down on my veranda, and we started talking. And as you do and you talk, you build a relationship, you build confidence. I liked him. I liked his understated approach to life. I liked the fact that he, like me, he liked to hide his lamp under a bushel. He did not brag. He wasn't beating his chest. He was eclectic. I like that. And we sat and we mused. And of course, eventually he came in and joined Salama some years ago. And in fact, he leads Salama today. And wow. He's doing a good job of leading Salama through incredibly difficult times, with all sorts of challenges around us, but at the same time, embracing and delivering and reducing risk for clients across this continent and around the world, whether it's Martin Franks in the UK, Bruce Lyman, for example, and others that served in our company, such as Dylan Evans and so forth, and Christian Kennedy, etc., they all played a part and were absolutely wonderful guys. But I think Bruce, fantastic. Just remind me the second part of your question, please.
So thank you about Bruce, because I found him exactly the kind of guest I love to have, with the three hums we talked about with you. Very understated, but just real charismatic, inspiring leader. The second one was, you've got involved as one of the very few white Kenyans in politics, and I just wondered what your, if you took a helicopter view of what's going on in Kenyan politics, what's been happening and what do you see happening in the future?
Look, I came back here uh, and had the confidence to come back here because I saw the direction that the country was going in. I saw a greater allegiance to democracy. Now, democracy, as you know, as Winston Churchill says, is the uh, best form of authority, apart from all the others that have been tried as such. Or the worst is the best of the bad bunch, so to speak, roughly in that order of words. And he's right. What are your choices? We have um, this country is unique in that we have had in the last 20 years plus, we've had now a good form of democracy here, where leaders are selected on the basis of their ability, etc. Unfortunately, what I see as highly corrosive here, Jonathan, is the use of monies to buy and shape systems. But if I take that and look at it and compare it to somewhere else, like, for example, the US or indeed any other country around the world that considers itself to be a democracy, I find those systems are also being abused and monies are being used in order to coerce, to buy favor, and so forth. But at the same time, I think ours is at a far more elevated uh, altitude, so to speak, in terms of our corruption. So, in terms of being involved in it, I have always had a latent desire to be involved in politics here. I was briefly, I was nominated to be a member of parliament. Unfortunately, that fell through because we weren't successful. But be that as it may, it doesn't matter. It wasn't to be, and it wasn't meant to be. But at the same time, I was, a member of the government of Kenya for 5 years, and I was put into that position, rightly so, by the correct authority. And I worked in two ministries. I worked in the Treasury, and I worked in and I worked in one called the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development. But I loved it. I loved it. But there was great risk. I was, at the same time as I was trying to stop grand larceny and corruption, I was also trying to make sure that we were building fresh opportunities. And I think that Kenya has been incredibly bold. For example, if you take our eastern border, we've got four counties up the eastern border: Lama, Garissa, Wajir, and Mandera. And they are largely homogenically Somali in terms of ethnic. And we haven't really talked about ethnic construct here. And it's a very difficult area for the country to invest in because, of course, there is a latent constantly fizzling um, guerrilla kind of conflict going on. And it's very difficult. But unless you go in there and look at it and see it, and in my opinion, unless you get them to build as part of the country so that the construct comes from within those areas, you won't be able to develop approximately 12 to 14% of the country, which is currently locked out from the rest of the country and we're unable to utilize correctly. Yeah, people say it's a desert. So what? Look what Dubai did with this desert. Look what Saudi did with this desert. Yeah, they've got oil, but look what they've done. They have developed it. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to develop that and our far north.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating, and it makes me think, as you stand up for doing the right thing. I loved Marcus Aurelius. So don't look for the third thing. Do the right thing, first thing, because it's the right thing, second thing. But don't look for the third thing, that you get praised for doing the right thing. You just do it because it's the right thing, and you live
Correct.
that. Um, I'm conscious that when you stand up against corruption, money laundering, bad dudes, all the kind of, even against terrorists, or you're getting people out of dodgy countries like you would have done if I'd been stuck in Nepal. Um, it's a lovely country, by the way. Let me just rephrase that. It was just going through a crisis triggered by the Maoists, but it's back to a reasonable form of democracy again, though it's still a young country. And a bit like Kenya, it struggles with the different forces that are going on. But you're constantly, throughout your career and your life, having to deal with risky situations with dangerous people who probably want to kill you and would shoot you without a hesitation. What's your lesson about dealing with toxic individuals? Because I'm in the boardrooms with CEOs and top teams, and some of them are really good people, and one or two of them are the most evil, selfish, self-serving little bastards I've ever come across. But they cover it over with I'm doing the right thing for the organization. But it's just all about them. When you look in the eyes of these people and you are negotiating with them, or you're in the Congo and people put $50,000 reward on your head to kill you because you are trying to stop the poaching and things like that, is there a lesson you take from how you sensed whether people were evil and how you negotiated with those kind of people? I'm just fascinated.
Well, there's a lot of questions in that statement you've just come out with. Um, please understand that I feel fear just the same as anyone else. Okay. And I've been intimidated. And I've slept in my bed, and it's no surprise that, my wife found that situation very difficult where I was sleeping with, live weapons inside my bed. But you think about it, someone's going to take you out. They're not going to shoot you in your bed anyway. They're going to eliminate you outside in an area where they've selected, not one that you have selected. So first and foremost, these jobs come with a sack full of stress. I mean, serious stress, mental, physical, moral stress, which bears down on you and can turn you into somebody that becomes quite obsessive, in the sense that, you are determined not to be defeated. Because you did it and you were not defeated, for example, in the military, you've decided now you won't be defeated in politics, but it's a different game. It's not the military, and you need allies and allegiances in order to survive in that game. And I think really with those particular risks that I faced there, and I was very stressed when I was undertaking that work, as I tried to sort of reduce and clamp down on individuals who were in the positions of authority that were conducting the stealing. I was asking myself, all I want to do is build a better country. All I want to do is create better opportunities for young Kenyans to come through and to build greater infrastructure so that this country can move forward and increase its GDP. And I found myself trying to defend Kenyans against the theft of large amounts of money that were going out through the back door. And it wasn't, in a sense, it wasn't my job to do that. But I took it upon myself because I felt I had the gravitas, but also an ounce of moral courage to stand up against it.
And there's that famous quote that all it takes for evil to thrive is for good men to do nothing. And so you've been one of those people who've not been a bystander, not condoned things. But I'm seeing this now, particularly in the pillaging of America by the uber rich, the tech bros, the president, his mates, feeding the family. I think was when we were talking about corruption. I think you came up with a figure like of all the countries of the world, and I think you know how many there are. I'm sure there's like 260 or whatever it is. That there's only 10% of them that aren't corrupt. And then we think, oh, well, Britain's okay. No, Britain's got corruption as well. America, we've got Londongrad, where accountants and lawyers and tax advisors help Russian oligarchs hide their money, help Brits hide their money, help people get the best divorce deal they can for billions. So what is the answer? I think you said it was like corruption is where people have a mindset that they feed their family from where they work. So, Trump uses his office of president to feed his family and get them Bitcoin and deals and gets a jet for a 400 million from the Arabs. What do we do about it? I mean, it's so endemic.
You've just described that incredibly well there. I would have thought it was African culture, but it seems to be a global culture. You mentioned, the 20 countries they're talking about where there is a solid base of anti-corruption in place, but also where people, human beings, are raised to resist issues like corruption. In this particular instance, I want to look at something else. I want to just give you the example of Congo, for example. The $50,000 on my head in Congo was entirely down to corruption. It was entirely down to the fact that there were individuals in powerful positions that wanted to be able to operate and take large sections of crown land and use that crown land to their benefit rather than that crown land being used for the purpose it was intended to be, whether it was for protecting forests, whether it was protecting wildlife, whether it was protecting. But of course, Congo is awash with incredibly valuable minerals. You cannot beat that level of corruption. You just simply can't. You just don't have the resources to do it. The only way to do it is through good people, like people who are prepared to stand up. And there are many, many great people out there, far better than me, with greater courage that have demonstrated that out across the world. So I think in pointing fingers, we need to be careful, as they all say in the old adage. When you point your finger, Jonathan, there's four pointing back at you.
Yeah.
Or certainly three pointing back at you. So am I perfect? No, I'm not. Did I try and be a good father? Absolutely yes. Did I try and be a good husband? I tried to be. Did I try and be a good officer? I tried to be. Did I try and be the best Marine? 100%. I try that every single day. And I'm still trying to do that now in this company. I'm trying to make sure that we do this thing right every single time. We have issues here and locally, just before I want to finish, just 10 seconds, issues here locally with securing our licensing, etc. And that issue has had to go to court. And the reason for that is because we're not prepared to impart with cash to get what should be rightfully given to us as probably the most qualified company in this country, bar a couple of other gigantic behemoths out there. And that hurts me, because when I think of feeding 5,000, when I think of all the things that we've done out there in order to support people, it means nothing. Not to the individual that wants your cash.
Yeah. And it's, thank you for that. And it's like trust but verify. This idea of come in with the right values, but don't be naive, because it's not a level playing field. People are out for themselves. Doesn't mean that you need to be. I was thinking of this. Your leadership just shines through from everybody who's known you, who's talked to me, all the things I've read about you. In your leadership journey, what's been a pivotal moment that changed or adapted how you led, and like, how you show up today? Just tell us. You've had many, but I mean, what's one that comes to mind? A pivotal moment.
So, Jonathan, I realized even when I was a young man, even at school, etc., that I was not perfect by any measure. I have my own sins. I've done my own wrongs. I'm not without fault myself. I think if I look back to when I was a young Marine, so with no rank, just a Marine, with effectively no responsibility except for myself and those buddies around me, etc., as a young Marine, I remember protecting individuals that had been exposed either to NCOs or other individuals who were using their authority to intimidate and do something that was wrong. In fact, I was a recruit. I was under training when this first happened. And I saw this evil taking place. And I said to myself right there and then that this would not continue. And it wasn't right. So I got that particular individual next to me, and in a room with a couple more individuals around me. And I said to him, tell me what is going on. And he then recounted his issues to me as to what was taking place, the intimidation that was taking place, the bullying that was taking place, and the coercion and everything else that went with it. And it was evil. And I said, you stay here. And you know this. If anything else happens to you, I expect you to tell me first and foremost. Now, there was an entire training team structure above that. There were NCOs. There were senior NCOs. There were officers. There were all levels of management. There were warrant officers. And not one of them had any idea or was prepared to stand up against what was taking place against this individual, except this single white man from Africa. Luckily, there was a jock, a Scotsman, fine fella. Unfortunately, he was being dismissed, and it was rapaciously in the sense that it was wrong that he was being dismissed as a super individual. And he said to me, I won't tell you what he called me, because it was a nickname. He said to me, Conrad, I'm coming with you, because they're going to throw me out anyway. So the pair of us marched up to the guard room, and I walked into the guard room, and I said to the junior NCO behind the desk, Corporal, I said, this is taking place. My name is P043666T, Recruit Thorpe. I'm here to report the following. And I said it. I won't tell you what that was because it's not appropriate for this or for other viewers. And he looked at me and went, Dad, pick the phone up. Next thing the sergeant, pick the phone up. Next thing the officer, next thing the major. They were all in. And the individual that was perpetrating that crime was then brought to account. He was then, what they tried to do, there were those who were there who tried to protect him, by the way, within the system. But it fell over. Too strong was the weight of the movement, so to speak. And eventually that individual was forced to leave. And I think for me, it's the issue where an individual used his status, position, authority, etc., in a foul situation to intimidate and bully an individual who's right at the bottom of the pecking order. And we've seen this so many times in different organizations around the world, in different countries around the world.
See, in
And
America
I think,
now.
and you asked me for that pivotal moment, that moment was me saying, I'm not tolerating this shit. I don't care if I'm a recruit. I have no authority, but I have all the authority because my word is my bond. And so I went up there and said, this is wrong, fix it, because this recruit's telling you to fix it. Now, if you've got that in you, you better use it. And I don't mean in a sense that you use it like a fool, because you've got to be careful. Before you know it, if you're not using it correctly, you're going to be hated. But it was used judiciously. It was used carefully. And we were able to protect that individual who went on to pass out and become an outstanding Royal Marine.
And it really resonates with me, which is partly why my wife and I set up the charity. It was her idea to protect the victims of violence against women and girls and young men because of what we'd experienced ourselves. And we said, we're not going to let this happen to other people. And I really admire my wife, Lee, for what she does to help these women, particularly part of boyfriends who are in serious organized crime, hiding shotguns under the bed, drug dealing, all this kind of stuff. And we try and get these women out of those situations and give them a new life. And this is fabulous work.
Well done.
That's her initiative from what she saw and her bad experiences going through that and having her life threatened and the situations that she was in. We're now at a perfect stage, Conrad.
Yeah.
Could you please introduce yourself? Tell us what you're doing now, what you've done in the past, and leave us with your top leadership practical tip. Over to you, sir.
I think I've covered most of those, but my name's Conrad Thorpe, and I'm the chairman of Salama Fikira. It is a risk management and enterprise risk company. And what that means is people call us a security company. We're not just a security company. We are a company that embraces and understands and contains risks in all its forms across the world where we work, particularly in Africa, but also in Asia and Europe, where we've been very strong. And we have worked on the other continents as well, but we're strongest in those areas. And right now I'm talking to you from Nairobi in Kenya, at my home, where I am enjoying the afternoon. The birds are out and singing around me. And I want to say that from the direction that my feeling is taking me at the moment is that there is a greater need in these latter years of our lives, not only to enjoy ourselves. It's not just about giving up and going away. I think we can continue to do things in our advanced age because we've got great wisdom. And I think that wisdom should be used to the advantage of the many. There is much more to do. I continue to feed children. I'm part of the Hunger for Langa, which is a Sikh organization, which I'm the chairman of. So that organization continues to feed school children in this country, and we wish to expand that. And these children are not attending school when they're not getting fed, but coming to school when there's food on the table. So you can accelerate education purely through feeding and making sure people have got food. Second thing, of course, that I'm doing in that field, but differently, but in the similar area, is conservation. And that I have a particularly strong feeling around conservation itself as well. I am, of course, I still have a latent and real feel for communities, and particularly for what I would call local politics. I'm interested in that. I continue to follow that very closely. I really think that's probably about it, really, right now. Maybe
And
a couple of things that
what's
I've forgotten.
yeah, and so really the top tip is around, I think you called it suck life, live it, make the most of what you've got left, isn't it? That's really the best bit of
Yeah.
advice I've got. Yeah.
In Swahili, we would say nyonya maisha, which is
Nuna
suck
mesha.
life.
Suck life.
Nyonya maisha. Nyonya maisha, which is suck life. Because you get one shot at this. I've lost a brother. My old man's gone, and everyone is in that. We're all on that railway track that eventually takes us to a point where we fall off it. While
Yeah.
you're on that track, gosh, get the most out of it. Get
Yeah.
out of your car. Get whatever it is. Get in your car and drive to a place you want to go to. You've never been before. Get on your bicycle. Get on your motorbike. Get on your boat. Get in that airplane. Go to where you want to go. And go do those things in life now before you can't do them. I can't walk across Africa anymore like I used to. Damn, did I love it when I could. I'll tell you one more thing, right? It's about money and it's about water. It's about substance and water. I'm walking through the center of the Rift Valley in a place called Kidong, where a very bad massacre took place many years ago. I won't talk about the massacre right now. In the Kidong, as I was walking across there by myself solo, I was carrying at one point 16 liters of water. That's a huge amount of water because there's no water, none. This was many years ago, and there was far less then. And I was having visions. I was down to my emergency bottle, which was a 1 liter bottle, which was down. So all the other liters had gone in the past 48 hours. I drank all the water. There was no place for me to get water. And I had this vision where, as I was walking along on the left-hand side, there was a table with a jug of water in. A jug of water on the table with a slice of lemon, I remember. Clear glass, I could see it. Little tablecloth on the table. I'm walking towards it, and this sea of savanna and thorns in the background. On the right-hand side, there was $1 million in cash. And I looked at it. At that moment, the only thing that had any value to me was the water, not the dollars. That you couldn't drink the dollars, you couldn't eat, you couldn't buy anything. But that water would save your life.
Yeah.
So find out what it is that's going to save your life and go for it. It's not always money.
It's not enough. Colonel Conrad Thorpe, OBE, thank you very much indeed. It was a real honor, pleasure to have a conversation with you. I think we need to chat again in a year's time. There's a few more things, a few more stories. But thank you so much for touching the lives of people in 125 countries, leaders at all levels, CEOs, explorers, former servicemen like yourself and myself. But thank you for what you do. Keep doing it. Keep living dangerously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Take care. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Cheers.